All righty. Hello, everyone. How are you? Thank you for being here with us today. My name is Jack McMahon. If you haven't gotten to know me yet, it's a pleasure to have you here with us today. We're truly, truly appreciative of all of the time that you spend with us in learning just the latest and greatest that comes from Dell. So as usual, this is on Zoom, so please stay on mute while the speakers are presenting. We do have just Tom and myself today, but Tom is a wealth of information, so be ready to learn a lot. If you're comfortable, have your camera on. We love to see your faces, and it's a little less awkward for us being on camera, so it helps us out a bit. If you have any questions, you can use the raise hand function. You can put your question in the chat, and you can put your question in the Q&A area. So we will be monitoring all of those to try and get all of your questions answered. Just a reminder, like usual, 4 lucky survey participants will be randomly selected at the end to win a $25 Amazon gift card. That survey link will pop up at the end of the webinar when it closes, and it will be sent to your email along with some resources and links that we will present today. And if you haven't heard yet, right, you might have been a member of the Dell client community, the Dell Technologies Unified Workspace community. We merged into one. We are now DTUC. So we literally cover everything that you could imagine. It just made more sense to be under one big umbrella. We've got a lot of fun new branding, a brand new website. So make sure you give it a shot. If you need to log in, give it a look. If you run into any issues joining the new community, let me know. Email me at memberservices@dtuc.com. I will drop that email here in the chat in a little bit. If you're running into any issues, please let us know. We will get it fixed for you. We spent a lot of time on the new site. We really want you to enjoy it as well. And the recording from today's webinar will be put on there as well as our YouTube page. So pay attention to that. Like I said, you'll get a lot of great information from Tom. So you're going to want to come back to it, keep learning, catch things you missed. So check your spam folders, let us know, send us an email if you run into any issues, but we're here for you. That's what the community is designed for. And we are here to support you and learn about the latest and greatest. Without further ado, Tom, I'm going to hand it off to you. Community, you are in great hands with Tom today. So Tom, have fun. Good luck. The community will ask a lot of questions, so hope you're ready.
Thanks, Jack. I appreciate that. And I'm going to share my screen and hopefully we have success here. Anyway, as Jack mentioned, I'm Tom Bentz. I am the product marketing manager for Dell Endpoint Security, and amongst the areas that I cover include SafeSupply Chain, which is the suite of supply chain offerings that we offer. In terms of the agenda, there we go. In terms of the agenda, so a couple things that we'll cover. You may have been a part of a presentation that Amy Price did several months back, and she went way deep on the supply chain security and the strategy with Dell. I realize that not everybody had a chance to see it. I'm going to do just a quick review. It'll probably take about 12 minutes or so to cover cybersecurity state of the union. Also cover some of the highlights of our supply chain security, and then I'll move into supply chain offerings. So one of our newest products that we introduced last month, secured component verification on cloud. I'll spend some time covering that. And then some other supply chain offerings as well. And then I do want to spend a couple minutes at the end just to talk a little bit about Dell Trusted Device Agent. That's kind of the engine that helps make secured component verification go. It also does some things around biosecurities, and I want to just make sure we cover that just so people have an understanding of what it is and some things that we're introducing later this year. And then, of course, at the end, we'll talk about the summary and resources. There we go. Okay, so Amy covered this again. I just want to reiterate some of the things that she highlighted a few months ago. And again, if you didn't attend it, this is just a good little background summary. And if you did attend it, like I said, it's probably about 12 minutes. We'll get through this as well as our supply chain strategy. So very briefly here, just to summarize, as we've learned in the past year, the threat landscape, which has always been growing and evolving, is now taking advantage of the vulnerabilities caused by changes in the workplace dynamic. And there's a couple things going on here. You can see that security threats are growing. A recent report from Verizon indicated that there were over 5,000 confirmed data breaches, 5,212 to be exact, of approximately 24,000 security incidents that they analyzed in 2022. There was a 13% spike in ransomware breaches, and that's more than in the last 5 years combined, again, from courtesy of Verizon. And then these areas obviously mean with the growing security threats that there's a cost associated with it, and the costs are staggering. We have seen expected costs of global damages from cybercrime over $10 trillion, $10.5 trillion anticipated by 2025. The Cybersecurity Ventures published this report. They expect global cybercrime costs to grow by 15% per year over the next 5 years. By the way, that number in 2015 was only $3 trillion. So you can see it's literally tripled over time. So security threats are growing. We know that. We also know that the remote workforce has changed over the last few years, and that introduces new complexity, new attack vectors. So a couple things to consider here for a moment, some interesting stats around remote work. 84% of IT leaders reported that data loss prevention is more challenging with a remote workforce. Probably seems intuitive. The second bullet point, which always gets to me, is that almost half of the employees that were surveyed in a recent study had indicated that they're less likely to follow safe data practices when working from home. It's rather intuitive, I suppose, but it's just, again, it's a little frightening when half of the people that you survey indicate that they're not taking those same safe data practices. Furthermore, the number of devices is growing. 76% of IT security decision makers say their organization's use of endpoint devices increased since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we see that the security threats are growing. We see that the remote workforce is growing. And that leads to some other interesting numbers here. Obviously, the attackers see these things as well, and they see that there's the threat landscape. It's growing, it's evolving, and they're trying to take advantage of the vulnerabilities caused by the changes in the workplace dynamic. According to ESG, 69% of organizations have experienced some type of cyber attack as a result of a poorly managed internet-facing asset. And I can imagine people out there, if you're an admin, if you're on the security side, you probably can attest to this. It seems like we've all been exposed or potentially exposed to spam emails, other things. So it's probably pretty intuitive that a large portion of the base has seen these kinds of attacks over time. So a couple of things I just want to cover here, just a few more data points for you. Let's make sure my slide deck here. There we go. So with the number of endpoints growing, they continue to be a major source of cyber attacks. They're enticing to attackers as the payouts can be huge. According to the MITRE ATT&CK framework today, there's 9 initial access techniques that adversaries use to gain entry to networks. And what we've learned in the last few years is that legacy defenses aren't doing enough to keep endpoints secure. Yet another industry research that we have received from Futurum, they conducted it a few years ago, 44% of organizations have had at least one hardware level or BIOS attack during the previous 12 months. I'll skip over to the second point here because that'll lead me into my next area. But the third bullet point, 82% of breaches were driven by individual errors related to things like phishing, social engineering, and such. So supply chain security was also a big part here. And in fact, supply chain was responsible for 62% of network breaches this past year. And that's according to that Verizon report that I talked about previously. And yet the other piece that we're seeing is that organizations still aren't quite there with developing a supply chain strategy. In the people that we've surveyed, organizations we've surveyed, we've only seen about 1/3 of businesses have indicated that they have a strategy in place for supply chain security. And this is all part, as they start to develop zero trust strategies and such, it all probably comes together, but it just shows that this is new, it's rapidly evolving, and organizations are trying to catch up with all of this and develop things like supply chain strategies. So moving on here. And again, I just want to highlight the middle piece here. So what we're hearing overall, we're hearing that organizations really don't know what to do about a security landscape that's constantly evolving, constantly shifting and changing. And it's no wonder why. Hopefully I painted the picture. Amy did as well back a few months ago. The complexity, the sophistication, the potential impact of attacks have also increased substantially over time. A single incident can lead to operational disruptions, lost revenue, compromised data, reduced productivity, and ultimately a tarnished brand or corporate reputation. So just a couple more points to call out that we're seeing. The cyber complexities, they're causing more opportunity for disruption as networks and devices become more interdependent and connected. Hardware threats were also increasing as the sheer number of devices with smarts and connectivity increases. So does the possibility of having a vulnerability. Then there's always the specter of counterfeit parts, which may themselves be vehicles for threats. So obviously a lot of caution is needed to ensure that devices are authentic. I'll skip over to the fourth point here, software threats. These are among the worst of all of these threats. It's the source of so many vulnerabilities. It could be intentional, like an insider threat, someone inserting subtle but malicious code into a core program, or totally unintentional, such as a bug. Counterfeit certificates as well, as we saw in the SolarWinds attack of several years ago. They're all still threats. It's a dynamic environment. It continues to change. And we're seeing new and greater software threats as the days approach, as the days evolve. Regulatory or regulation risks, I should say, shows that well-intentioned people can still create issues, especially when you have regulations on critical industries and compliance policies and controls end up conflicting each other. And then the last piece I just want to speak to, which again segues into the supply chain, is that supply chain IT globalization. It means that every business, every nation is more dependent on others to provide components that are critical for their operations. Okay, and on to the next slide here. Okay, so in addition to the landscape that's happening, we are obviously experiencing current events. And apart from the attacks themselves, there's several factors that impacting organizations' cybersecurity postures today. You know, I keep mentioning COVID. Everybody mentions COVID worldwide. It's a worldwide event, such as COVID. Various threats and attacks, global government response have accelerated the move to zero trust, as well as demand for things like SASE technology and managed security services. Here in the US, the May of 2021 executive order kicked off a big chain of events because it really dug deep into a lot of the things that we at Dell have always been talking about. But the executive order specifically dictated the adoption of key security technologies with special attention to supply chain security, including language around secured component verification, which I'll again speak to later on in this presentation. We've talked for years about the breadth and depth of endpoint security here at Dell, including built-in or hardware-based security into supply chain security. So, which is also what I cover. In addition to supply chain, I also do this the endpoint built-in types of security provisions. So we've been talking about it, and then IDC published their report back in 2021 that validated this. So it's always good to have validation from the analysts, even after the fact, but it's great to know that Dell has been on top of this and has been a part of this for several years, for quite a while, actually. We all know about news about high-profile attacks in healthcare, financial services, and energy. These are key targets for attackers. I cover some use cases later on that just highlight some of the reasons why they're looking for enhanced supply chain security. But activities like the Colonial Pipeline attack of a few years ago underscore this. They're high-profile attacks, and they're ones that are causing governments to take action and protect certain segments, which is great to see that people are taking action. But what happens when something is protected and the attackers move on to a different target that's less obvious and softer? And this takes us to the next point. The new emerging targets, which are state and local government and smaller organizations, or SMB organizations, I should say. In 2022, some of the conflicts around the world drew attention to the fact that the cloud security is great, but in an instance where an entire nation has the internet turned off on premises, customers are looking at air-gapped environments. They came back in a big way, especially federal governments and such, and that supports the ability to act quickly, such as closing an embassy, the kinds of things that we've seen with the global events of the last year and a half. So with that as a backdrop, just to cover our supply chain. And again, Amy covered this. I'll just take a few minutes to highlight and summarize some of these issues as well. So the next session, just give a brief overview of how Dell manages its supply chain and what we do to ensure supply chain security throughout the life cycle. And supply chain is an expanding attack surface. In 2021, 62% of supply chain attacks investigated by the EU Agency for Cybersecurity were the result of misplaced trust in a supplier. And yet, as I mentioned earlier, only about a third of large organizations have developed a supply chain security strategy. So the reality is that nowadays, devices can be tampered with once they leave the factory, with very little traceability. So a couple things to mention as to what we do. We and Dell and our supply chain security initiative takes a comprehensive approach to protect its supply chain and deliver solutions customers can trust. We've implemented cutting edge programs across the full spectrum of supply chain risk. And what we've done all results in ensuring that security, integrity, quality, and resilience of our products is occurring. Dell takes a comprehensive approach to protect its supply chain and deliver solutions customers can trust. Supply chain security is the application of control measures that protect physical assets, inventory, information, intellectual property, and of course, people. And it exists to ensure all Dell offerings are covered, that they're designed, they're built, they're delivered, and they're retired, with supply chain security as a top priority. We've mapped the most prevalent and consequential supply chain attack vectors, such as counterfeit components, malware, and firmware tampering. We've invested millions over the decades to reduce the introduction of malicious and even unforeseen activities into the supply chain. And we've implemented cutting-edge programs across the full spectrum of supply chain risk, from threat-informed product designs, training tens of thousands of developers on secure development practices, securing our factories, adding and improving logistics security programs, all the way to post-delivery support and services. Our secure supply chain program aligns to and in places exceeds U.S. government promoted best practices and standards, and we constantly are improving. The last piece to point out here is just the fundamental objective, and that's for this effort is to ensure that the security, integrity, quality, and resilience of our products remains intact. You only need to look at the supply chain turmoil brought about by the pandemic and realize that Dell was able to contain supply disruptions to a bare minimum and kept our product flowing to our customers in the time that they needed it most. Okay, so the idea of a supply chain is far different than in even the recent past, as it's more than products on a truck or a boat. Global complexities require that manufacturers pay attention to supply chain security throughout the life of the product. And at Dell, we divide it up into 4 quadrants: manufacturing, assembly and customization, shipping and delivery, and then end user lifecycle. We consider security throughout this process, not just during the time the device is being produced. So just talking through a few of these pieces here. Under manufacturing, including sourcing, Dell employs rigorous partner screening processes, often going beyond the industry standards to ensure the quality and security of devices and their components. These partners also routinely undergo audits to ensure compliance with Dell's comprehensive set of supply chain security standards. Assembly and customization, in addition to adhering to our supply chain security standards, Dell device manufacturers also frequently test parts during manufacturing to ensure counterfeit products do not sneak into the supply chain. To further mitigate this risk, unique piece part identification numbers, or PPIDs, have labels that are affixed to specific high-risk components containing information about the supplier, the part number, country of origin, and date of manufacturer, so that Dell can identify, authenticate, track, and finally validate these components to ensure that the customer receives exactly what was shipped. Shipping and delivery, Dell Freight is protected through layers of physical security, from tamper-evident seals, which I'll talk a little bit more about later, door locking mechanisms, to a variety of tracking devices designed to detect if Dell devices inside of them have been tampered with within transit. Dell devices themselves also feature tamper detection technologies. For an additional level of protection, customers can purchase Dell SafeSupply Chain solutions, which provide additional supply chain security and integrity controls. I mentioned tamper-evident seals, NIST level hard drive wipes to ensure a clean slate are another example for the customer's corporate image. And then verification. So Dell commercial devices ship with cryptographically signed platform certificates that capture snapshot attributes of platforms during manufacturing, assembly, testing, and integration. And these platform attributes are then cryptographically linked to the specific device using the trusted platform module as the hardware root of trust. And then the last piece along the life cycle is the responsible device retirement that covers the customer's device use, end of life, and responsible retirement. The years that a customer has a secure Dell trusted device in their ownership, use at home or at business, the licensing, entitlements, the updates of everything from software to firmware to patches and all the way through. We ensure that all of this is securely delivered. We consider the part of our supply chain. And that also includes the servicing of the device, whether we're sending a physical part or sending somebody to work on a computer. There's still there with the customer as their partner, and we help to make sure that the device and their ecosystem is secure all the way through device retirement. So the right-hand side of the screen here, just to kind of highlight some of the security processes that we offer that are used that help ensure the security of the devices. There's hardware integrity, which people think of in the Dell supply chain as the chips, the motherboards, that sort of thing. There's the software integrity, which is about ensuring that the code we develop for BIOS, for firmware, anything else which Dell uses to touch the device is securely developed as part of the secure development lifecycle. And then there's physical security, and that's the facilities and the people. And it's not something that's always obvious to an external viewer, but the people who work on the devices are validated, background checks, for example, just to ensure that security is broad and deep. But regardless of whether somebody works at the factory or not, at Dell, we view all of ourselves as being part of the supply chain, and we all have a role in that security. And don't forget that one of the differentiators with Dell is that we handle customization really well. From deploying a specific image to having hard drives wiped to NIST standards and reinstalling the image, we have additional paid services available at our Second Touch facility for Second Touch. Again, I'll cover that a little bit in detail later. Custom secure packing and other security measures. Along the way, we're testing and verifying throughout each step of the process. So don't be afraid to ask if customers ask if they want something specific, because especially here in the US, we can fulfill those kinds of orders. Okay, and I think the last slide here regarding supply chain security, just to summarize, and that's that security is needed throughout the supply chain. It begins with the manufacturing process and continues throughout assembly and customization to shipping and delivery. Even includes processes to ensure security for products end of life. And that's the value of Dell SafeSupply Chain. Customers can feel good that their hardware is tamper-free on delivery with Dell SafeSupply Chain. Devices are not tampered with, or that counterfeit counterparts components are not inserted before shipping. And again, Dell looks at several areas in ensuring supply chain security. I talked about the hardware integrity, ensuring that devices aren't tampered with or counterfeit components are not inserted before shipping. Talked about software integrity, which ensures that no malware is inserted in firmware or device drivers before shipping. And then the physical security aspect, which consists of a high level of physical security in factories, robust screening and hiring practices, as well as annual compliance training and certification. So that was the background for what we do, what the layout of the cybersecurity world is like right now, the steps that Dell takes to lead in supply chain security. But we know there's some industries such as federal government, pharma, financial, to name just a few. Oops. There we go. So these industries that I mentioned may have requirements or needs for enhanced supply chain offerings. And Dell does offer additional supply chain offerings should organizations require it. And so that's where I'll move into next is some of our Dell Safe Supply Chain offerings. And I'll start with our newest offering, which is secured component verification on cloud. There we go. Okay. So supply chain is one of the most important potential sources of compromise. And as I've mentioned in the last 10 or 15 minutes, it's one that Dell has invested heavily in securing. Our secure supply chain offerings help ensure endpoint security from the factory throughout the PC lifecycle. And these are offerings that I'm going to talk about here comprise a number of added protections in place to secure PCs and ensure they are safe from the first boot. And secured component verification on cloud, or I'll call it SCV throughout the presentation. We actually just launched in early May of this year. And the overview of SCV, you probably heard it through if you've heard some recent, whether it's a press release or an interview with our executives, they're obviously very excited about this add-on capability. But the overview is it's a supply chain security offering that provides additional assurance to the customer that their Dell devices are manufactured and delivered to their door exactly as ordered. In effect, it's a digital fingerprint, and it's a fingerprint of the components it's created at the factory. And then when the customer receives it, they will be able to view the certificates, ensure that they are as built, that the components are verified. The components include a number of pieces, including the processor, hard drive, network card, trusted platform module, and more. And then once validated, the setup process for a new device can continue. If for some reason the component cannot be verified, then that product is returned to Dell for a new one using standard existing Dell return policies. So how it works, and it's pretty intuitive here, but just to show that our SCV on cloud solution, it starts with the customer placing the order. They include SCVs as part of the capabilities as an add-on. The order is sent to Dell manufacturing for build. The PC component data is collected, platform certificate is created and signed at the factory. The certificate is stored, actually, and I'll get to the other version of SCV we have here in a moment, but for the purposes of SCV on cloud, certificates actually stored any secure Dell environment and provided via our Dell Trusted Device web service. PC is delivered to the customer, and then the customer deploys Support Assist for Business, as well as the Dell Trusted Device Agent, which I mentioned. They'll view the components, the verification through TechDirect, and they can view the results there. And that way they can ensure that the components are verified and that, that nothing happened en route from transit from the factory to their desktop or their doorstep, and then on they go. In terms of the benefits, first of all, the benefits are that the customer gets verification that the devices are secure from factory to the receipt and setup. We're also hearing from customers that they're building this into their zero trust principles, so it can be part of a very thorough strategy. And last, it can improve IT security operations in a low-touch environment that can handle fleets of hardware devices for greater and more efficient security operations. One of the pieces of based on the components that we're using for SCV on cloud, it really is designed to enable component verification for fleets. In other words, it's a fast, simple, effective way of running secured component verification. And again, it's really designed for multiple devices and such at the same time. It can be done, and I'll show kind of how it works here in a moment. In terms of what's needed, I mentioned these things earlier in the slide. Using SCVs really, it's easy, but it does require a few things to verify devices and components. SCV on cloud uses TechDirect, which is the Dell portal for viewing the health and security results of your PC fleet. It also requires the Dell Trusted Device Agent, which I've mentioned a couple times in this presentation, and I'll mention a little bit more at the end, but that's our agent that pulls the telemetry needed to verify the components. The agent also provides ongoing biosecurity and offers powerful insights into the security of our commercial devices. So the Dell Trusted Device Agent is the engine that helps us run, but it does so many other things. The other piece here is Support Assist for Business, and that's used to deploy these software offerings, and our instructions will provide the info you need to use SCV. It'll be provided as part of the order, but also available online at Dell Support. So just some things that require setup at the beginning, but once if customers are already using Support Assist, they know how to deploy the software. If they don't use Support Assist, we obviously provide the instructions to make it easy for them to deploy. So the next slide here, I'll just kind of give you a brief view. And if people have access, I'll cover some of the resources at the end. But we've got ways that people can see it. We've got, Dell has a demo center. If you have access to that, we have that available in the demo center. There's obviously ways that people can see how this works live, but just to provide a couple screenshots here. So these screenshots simply show what a customer can expect to see in TechDirect. So that upper left-hand corner, you'll see that screenshot. That is a view of TechDirect. They see a list of their devices. They see status as to whether their device is verified, which is that right-hand column. If something looks amiss, the user clicks on that particular line item, and they'll get more details for the device. And that's what the area on the lower right is. And so within that device's info is a summary of the components. And the screen grab here just shows a number of the components that is tracked. And you can see here what, in this case, in the screen grab, that there is something going on there under fixed storage. It could not be verified. And so in this example, if the product or component cannot be verified, and in this case, it just said it's missing, doesn't mean anything was tampered with or necessarily, but obviously it cannot be verified. And that's what we're looking to do here. And if that's the case, the customer just ships back the entire device via the usual Dell support and return policies. No additional support services are needed for this. So I talked about some of the industries that are most in need. And just to reiterate, and this is based on conversations that we've had, that I've had in my time in this role, not all of our customers require the added scrutiny of the supply chain, and they most definitely benefit from our market-leading supply chain practices. But we do hear from several industries along the way who've expressed interest. As I mentioned earlier, federal, state, and local governments, in some cases, they're going to have requirements to have additional security measures, and SCV is one of the examples of how to reach that. large companies who will align with similar measures based on these U.S. executive orders. Obviously, you see in the news companies are trying to align with these executive orders from 2021, and we hear that as well. Companies that may have greater need of IP security protection, think about pharma, think about financial and such, they're going to have more stringent security needs due to increased compliance requirements. And that would be another piece as well. There's just simply organizations that just have additional compliance requirements. And I think about the pharma industry as somebody that needs additional enhanced security measures beyond what we provide them. And so secure component verification on cloud is a viable addition for customers and companies that simply just need additional capabilities. So just to cover the overview here, and this is I'll talk about a previous version of SCV that we had. And primarily, so just to summarize, we just introduced the SCV on cloud. That was back in May. It's a worldwide solution. Its manifest is created at the factory. It stores the inventory certificates in the cloud using secure Dell servers. We have compatibility for a wide range of new and existing Dell products, with more coming. And we link to that under the data sheet, once you get if you see the resources, and responding to market needs for simplicity to verify the components. And we do that through cloud storage and Tech Direct, which is our online portal. But I do want to mention we've also had SCV on device for several years. It's primarily, I think I call it US solutions, North America mainly. A little bit of a different process, a little bit more targeted to some of the organizations within the federal government that do require air-gapped solutions. Its manifest is created at our second touch facility. It stores the inventory certificates on the device. And at this time, we've only kept it, we have not added new product capability or compatibility with it. It's really only the 12th and I think the 13th generation of Dell commercial PCs. And again, response to unique needs, primarily, as I mentioned, there's federal government requirements that are looking for air-gap solutions and on-host storage. So we really are excited about the on-cloud version, believe that it meets the needs for the vast majority of our enterprise customers. It's easy to use. It can be deployed across a fleet of devices, and it's compatible with essentially all of our most recent products, including the ones that are just being launched this past spring and now. But we do offer that that on-device solution if there are customers that require it, and it's just a matter of ensuring that the latest products are compatible with that. So, not to take too much time here, but just this presentation will just summarize this. This will be available for you all as well at the end. Just highlights the differences between the two solutions. And I just want to reiterate, SCV on cloud, available worldwide. Creation of the manifest of the certificates of the components is done at the factory, stored off-host in a secure cloud environment, retrieval and viewed through the Dell Tech Direct portal, and with the help of Dell Trusted Device Agent, as well as Support Assist for Business, and then a wide range of products that are supported across Latitude, Optiplex, Precision, XPS, and including the most recent products that we've introduced. So a lot to go on with SCV on cloud. We're really excited about it. We're getting a lot of great feedback from the market and the field, and we've been talking about it a lot, and I know our executives are excited about it too. So we keep spreading the word on SCV on cloud as more and more customers are starting to build in their supply chain security strategy and looking for more capabilities. So that covers SCV. I do want to cover a few other offerings that we have. These are primarily done at our second touch facilities, and they are, again, unique needs for customers should they need them. Things like pallet seals, tamper evidence seals. So under our safe supply chain offerings, we do offer tamper evidence seals added to seal the system before shipping to final destination. We offer tamper evident tape added to seal the system box. We offer tamper evident pallet seals added before shipping to final destination. And these could be added separately to full pallet orders. And the keys here, again, if there are customers that do need additional requirements, whether it's compliance, whether it's whatever needs, these can be handled within the second touch facilities to meet those needs. It's clearly not something we pride ourselves on our market leading capabilities. But again, I just want to reiterate that there are some organizations out there that might be required or may need additional provisions, and those capabilities are offered. And then the last piece here, in terms of some of the offerings, is the data sanitation components. So the Dell Safe Wipe and such. So basically here, secure hard drive wipes, which mitigates the risk of compromised hard drives. There's a couple of different ways that they can be wiped and sanitized based on what type of drive they are, and then reimaging as well, according to customer contact specifications. And more often than not, these things are done, like I said, between second touch facility, could be a services approach to it. And again, if it's required by those organizations for additional type of supply chain security, those are the things that we can offer. So I want to cover Dell Trusted Device Agent. And just real briefly, while it's not necessarily part of Dell SafeSupply Chain, as I mentioned earlier, it's the engine that helps secure component verification on Cloud Go. It does this by pulling endpoint telemetry. It includes other protections. It ensures that customers will get the maximum Safe BIOS protections, and it's available for all Dell commercial devices via download. This just summarizes some of the things that it does in addition for SCV on cloud. Some of our newest and maximum protections around Safe BIOS. The Dell Trusted Device Agent pulls that telemetry data and enables things like indicators of attack, which detect potentially malicious modifications to BIOS attributes. It detects tampering of BIOS firmware. It provides a security score, an aggregate security score based on 8 different variables, just so that somebody could take a look at their fleet and at a high level dashboard view, get an understanding of if they have devices that may not be in compliance or may have some issues that need to be addressed. And it also verifies the integrity of the Intel ME region, the management engine region. So there's a lot of things with the Dell Trusted Device Agent that go beyond SCV on cloud. And as I mentioned, it's a downloadable agent. But coming later this year, we're actually going to be offering that as pre-installed, and which would reduce the need to download or install software. It's going to be added for Dell commercial devices. And then this just ensures the ability for customers to receive that maximum level of Safe BIOS protections, new capabilities as they come up, all those kinds of things that are part of the maximum level of protections for Safe BIOS. So I just wanted to make a quick play for Dell Trusted Device Agent so people understand the value of it and the capabilities, and just to let people know that this is going to be something that's going to be pre-installed on our commercial devices in the very near future. Just want to cover some of the summary here and provide some of the resources. Just to summarize, supply chain attacks are on the rise for hardware, software, and transit, touches all areas of the supply chain. We have market-leading supply chain security that covers these areas. There are some companies that require additional supply chain security for various reasons, and Dell is well positioned with our solutions. Secured component verification on cloud is our newest offering that provides even greater security from factory to setup. And for more information, we have resources. We can make the links available here at the end. You can visit our sales portal if you have access to it. Your sales representative should have access to it as well. There's plenty of ways to get resources for if you have more information. And I do have some links here in the deck, including our data sheet. I also do want to make a point to recommend that you do some downloads for reading. Our supply chain security white paper recently updated this spring. I think Amy probably gave a pitch to it at her presentation. I'm doing the same here, but it provides a lot of the details here and then some that just give you an idea of what Dell does to keep devices safe. Obviously, we have data sheets for secure component verification as well as safe supply chain, but a couple other white papers that might be of interest as well. Our Dell and Intel white paper shows all the ways that Dell and Intel combine and collaborate to provide greater security. And then last, but certainly not least, we've got a white paper on Dell Trusted Device, which covers a broad area of the capabilities that we provide. A lot of it is surrounding Safe BIOS and BIOS protections, but it covers more than that. And again, great reading if you have the time. We provide much more detail than I've given you in the 40 or so minutes today. And again, if you have the time just to download it, take a reading at your leisure, I'm sure you will feel good to know what Dell is doing to help provide and keep your devices safe. And with that, whoops, I think that is it.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Tom. Lots of great information there. And like Tom said, we'll make all of these resources available to you after. So keep an eye out in your email. I will have links to all of those that we send out in the post-event email. We do have a question from the audience, Tom, that if you're comfortable answering, would be great. And that question is, how dependent is Dell on Chinese goods and services? And what plans does Dell have to mitigate a complete embargo on goods and services from China specifically?
Yeah, I don't, the one thing I will say is that there was an announcement that Dell made earlier this spring that that we are in the process of reviewing and reducing some of our reliance on that particular market for various aspects of the supply chain. Some of the things I covered early on really do mitigate the risk in terms of, whether it's component IDs or additional security at factory and such. There's a lot of things that we are doing. And like I said, that announcement earlier in the year from Dell executives has indicated that we are going to go through the process of reducing our reliance on that particular market for sourcing and all those kinds of things.
Good to know. Thank you. Jerry, hopefully that answers your question. And this is an opportunity, right? Whoever else in the audience has some more questions, please let us know. Tom is, like I said in the beginning, a wealth of information. So don't be shy, ask your questions. You can put them in chat. You can put them in the Q&A section, but we'll leave it open for a couple of minutes. So have your questions come on in. In the meantime, right, Tom, you covered a lot of great information and you did mention Amy's presentation. So if you want to check out Amy's presentation as well, it is on the Detox site. Do not be afraid. Try and log in, send it out. I will include a link to the new site in that post-event email as well. So keep an eye out in your email. And then all of those resources were awesome. If there was one resource in particular, Tom, what would you recommend for someone to go find and see?
Yeah, for the purposes of today's conversation, I would start with the supply chain security white paper.
Got it. That's
going to cover a lot of the things that I mentioned here. There's going to be more details in it. It's very, very thorough. And again, it really underscores, we do acknowledge and understand that people, there's growing questions. Where are these components coming from? How do we ensure their security? What is Dell doing to mitigate the risk? And those are the kinds of things that the white paper can get even further into the process than I talked about today. But as I mentioned, then the theme is it's the life cycle. It starts with sourcing, manufacturing, and all of those kinds of things, and it goes through the secure retirement of our devices as well. But the white paper will talk about that and then some.
Well, I know that makes me feel a little safe. I'm coming up on my refresh, so making sure that it's all going to be good in the retirement stage helps me breathe a breath of fresh air.
Yep.
So
and just Jack, I know you mentioned earlier before we got online here that your device is a little long in the tooth, and obviously, it's always a great idea because you do get additional security protections with newer devices. You're getting the latest and greatest, and so it's always a recommendation if you've got a device a few years old, you can take advantage of the latest and greatest that we offer for safe BIOS, safe supply chain, and all those things with a new device.
Yeah, I'll sign up first, right? I'll be the first one to let you know what I think of the entire process, but I'm sure it's going to be perfect. Yeah, so are there any other questions from the audience before we wrap up, or else we can kind of give everyone 10 minutes back? Tom, do you have any closing words that you would like to say to everybody?
Well, hopefully I kind of, relayed. I didn't, talking about the state of the industry, the events that are causing greater concern and anxiety, the things that Dell's doing to reduce those concerns and anxieties, some things that we're introducing, especially with the Dell Trusted Device pre-install that'll take advantage of even greater capabilities for security, and the resources that we talked about as well. I would just say if people have the opportunity just to make sure you take advantage of the resources that we're creating, because they'll provide, like I said, a lot more than I was able to relay to you all today in 40 some minutes.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely post those resources as well in our resource library, and links to it will be sent out in this post-event email. So everybody on the call today and everyone that views this recording in the future, right, those resources will be available within the Detox site on the Dell pages. You can find them, they're accessible. And then you also mentioned, right, if you've got access to the demo center, to go in there and check it out, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of great of things to find beyond ours, but we've got a demo that covers secured component verification. It's under an umbrella of Dell Trusted Device, and it's a 5-module demo. We just created it for a recent event. We're getting a lot of great feedback, but one of the things I love about it, it really does show not just SCV, but it shows how the Dell Trusted Device agent works and how it works in other environments. And at some point in the near future, I'd love to come back and talk about how Dell Trusted Device agent works in endpoint management environments such as Intune and Carbon Black Cloud. You'll see that we come to our customers' environments. Intune and Carbon Black Cloud are major endpoint management management solutions. And that demo sent in the demo center, that demo actually includes some of the ways that it works within those environments.
Well, Tom, we'll definitely have you back soon. You're fun to
Great.
listen to, fun to interact with. So we will definitely get that on the calendar. So everybody
Perfect.
pay attention for that. So because that topic will be coming up soon. Yeah, Tom, we'll work together on getting that scheduled so
Yep.
you can provide that for the entire community.
That'd be great. I'd love to do it.
Awesome. Well, it doesn't look like we've got any more questions coming in. Just a reminder, when this webinar ends, you will see a link for the survey, and it will also be sent in that email with all the resources. But Tom, thanks again. I look forward to working with you again to do another one of these. It's been a blast. I hope everybody got a lot of great information from this. So Tom, thank you. Community, thank you. Stay tuned for more. And you'll see Tom's name and another webinar pop up here pretty soon. We'll get this fired up quickly.
Thanks, Jack. I appreciate it. I appreciate everybody's time. Have a great day.
Thank you, Tom.